I was sent this video by a friend. Thank you, Dale. I appreciate it. It's a video of this guy named Uncle Freedom. It's the Uncle Freedom channel. I think he's in Nebraska, but he is a cop, and he's going to explain that all cops aren't tyrants, that they are good, and he's going to propagate the narrative of a few bad apples. We're going to go through this, and we're going to make some comments along the way because I think it's instructive to listen to a cop talk about how cops really aren't that bad when we see time after time that they're worse than every one of us says. And the plank of why I say a cab is because they swear to be bad cops. They take the oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and then they become the very domestic enemies they swore to protect us from by saying that they're going to enforce all the laws of the state, most of which are unconstitutional and immoral. So let's get into this.
And uncomfortable truths about law enforcement. Number one, all cops are tyrant pigs, man. They're just doing the government's bidding. There are literally hundreds of...
It's so interesting that he said they're just doing the government's bidding, because at the end of this video, he says this right here.
But what you see a lot now is cops are very gun shy to get into altercations because they are viewed so negatively by the public. And the only thing like most cops want in their life is to not end up in the news and to not become case law. Like
all they want in their lives as cops is to not end up in the news and not become case law. All they should want is to protect and defend the rights of every single American in their community. It's just amazing. The more you get a cop to talk, the more he reveals who he really is, the more the fangs and the claws come out.
There are literally hundreds of thousands of interactions between the good citizens of America and law enforcement every single day.
Did you know that most of those interactions come by way of traffic law and traffic stops? Let me show you this real quick. This right here says traffic stops are the most common interaction between police and the public, accounting for about 40%. I've seen 40 to 60% of all civilian encounters with law enforcement. Traffic stops under traffic law, which is a violation of the Constitution. So most of those interactions are unconstitutional interactions. And while a lot of people might go, oh yeah, well, I was speeding, I guess I did do wrong, it's because we've been conditioned to believe that we've done wrong. Actually, a crime is happening, but people don't see it as a crime because they've been propagandized by the 15,000-hour public fool indoctrination program to think that, hey, anytime I don't submit to a cop, or anytime I speed, or anytime I don't turn on my blinker, I've committed a crime and I deserve the unconstitutional interaction that's being foisted against me. So even though people might not recognize it as a crime, doesn't make it any less of a crime. And this is how insidious this whole culture, this whole law enforcement culture actually is.
Hundreds of thousands, if not into the millions of interactions every single solitary day. If cops were overwhelmingly bad and tyrannical as a group, you would never know the names of the bad cops that did the bad thing. But
again, that's not true, because most crimes are accepted by the public, but crimes accepted by the public don't make them less of a crime. This is how horrible this is. Cops are truly, truly bad, but because we've been our minds have been freaking pickled by indoctrination, our standard for righteousness is so low that we see the most cruddy, scummy people among us as righteous human beings that are just there to protect and serve. And it's just not true. It's no measure of good mental health to be considered well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. It is a profoundly sick society that looks at law enforcement and goes, okay, I guess I'm the criminal, when it's really the criminality that was foisted against you by the clown with the clown suit.
we can all get on board, cops and the good citizens alike, and hate on the ones that are breaking laws and doing dumb stuff, because nobody hates a terrible cop or a bad cop as much as good cops do, because
And that's why all you good cops are constantly protecting the bad cops when they foist their overt criminality. I'll call traffic law covert criminality because most people don't see it as a crime. But overt criminality is when you actually lay hands on somebody in violation of the Fourth Amendment right to be secure in their person, and none of your other cop friends do anything about it. What the frick?
it makes us look bad as a whole. Hence the reason we hear things like all cops are tyrants, or, FTP, or all cops are pigs. What is it? Or ACAB or ACAP, all cops are bastards, all cops are pigs. Right? We hear those things. But if that was the case, you wouldn't be able to keep track of it. And honestly,
guess what? We can't keep track of it. Thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of videos are posted every single day where a cop is abusing his power in an overt way. Not counting the covert ways.
if they were all bad, we would have enough of a stake that you would probably never hear about it at all anyway. It would just be normal, but it's not normal. It's completely out of the ordinary when a cop does something incredibly stupid that violates someone's constitutional rights.
It is absolutely normal and ordinary for a cop to violate somebody's rights. This guy is literally being a propagandist for evil, tyrannical law enforcement.
I know somebody's...
And he wants you to not believe what your eyes see and what your ears hear. This is infuriating.
going to yell, but then qualified immunity. We're going to cover that in volume 2. Because I'm going to hurt some feelings with that one, because I think a lot of you don't know what it actually is.
Okay.
So yeah, no, not all cops are tyrants. Not all cops are pigs. They don't really care. Cops just are trying to do their job and keep their community safe for the most part.
The reality is the exact opposite of what he just said. And it's all predicated. The entire foundation of law enforcement is built on upholding all the laws of the state. There are actually laws that say that cops can't do what cops have been doing. For example, 18 U.S.C. 241 and 242. 241 is conspiracy against rights. We see cops conspiring against us all the time. Deprivation of rights under color of law is number 242. They are constantly depriving us of our rights every single day under the color of law.
Cops are just hitting their quota, man. I'd be careful if you drive around the end of the month, because cops got to meet their quota. I remember hearing this when I was 16 years old. That is complete and utter bullcrap. It doesn't exist. In fact, there is a law that says you cannot impose a quota on a law enforcement agency for citations. You can't.
Okay, so let's say that there isn't a quota. This makes cops even worse, because without a quota, they're acting like they have a quota. So you mean there's no mandate for them to pull us over as often as they do? 40 to 60% of police interactions is through traffic law, and yet they're going to do it anyway? They're not required to do it, but they do it anyway? It's kind of like that cop, that famous cop on TikTok that goes, you know what? We just pull behind you, watch you squirm to make you a little bit fearful, to instill fear in you. Or like Brianna Strauss from Federal Way. I can drive 90 miles an hour. You can't. So get the F out of the way. If you don't get the F out of the way, we'll pull behind you and find a reason to pull you over. And that's what traffic law is. Traffic law is a cop trying to put his foot into the door so he can see if he can smell him some marijuana. So he can open the floodgates of criminality on you and ruin your life. That's how they operate. They don't have a quota? Well, they're doing it of their own volition then.
It takes a very specific kind of person to be a cop. The hours are terrible.
That's the only true thing he said. It takes a special kind of person to be a cop. It's that guy who wants the ring of power. He wants to escape from any and all liability because he got excited when he heard about this qualified immunity concept, and he wants to sign on for that. You mean I can do things that the general public isn't allowed to do, and if I see the general public do what I'm doing, I get to arrest them, but I don't have to be arrested and go to jail? Where do I sign? Takes a special kind of person.
The pay's not super great. It's dangerous a lot of the times. You're going to be asked to go do things that normal people don't want to do.
It's not as dangerous as logging. It's not as dangerous as maintenance work. It's not as dangerous as construction work. It's not as dangerous as pizza delivery. Out of a list of occupations that are dangerous, it ranks consistently about 23 to 25, way down the list. Only 11 officers die per 100,000, for example, and a logger, it's 111 per 100,000. So I'm sorry, it's 14 cops who die per 100,000, and loggers is 111 per 100,000. And the big part of the danger of officers is they put themselves in dangerous positions by poking and prodding and harassing and ruining the lives of people. If your occupation was that, you should probably expect to have a fatality rate as high as a logger. I'm surprised that police fatality rates aren't higher than they actually are, because they're out there doing a whole bunch of bad stuff against people they're claiming to protect and serve. None of what this guy's saying is logical, and none of it meets with reality.
It takes a special person to continually put the gear on and go do that day after day, especially considering the climate towards law enforcement right now. Not only do you have to go do things that other people don't want to do, you are also hated universally by most people just because you have the uniform.
Now, why would you be hated almost universally by people just because you're wearing a uniform? You're arguing against yourself. You're like, if police are that bad, if that bad of a tyrant, you wouldn't even know the names of the people who are actually acting bad. Then why do they have such a bad name? You even admitted they're universally hated. Why? Why do people get nervous when you pull behind them? Because you know something tyrannical is about to happen to you. They're going to get out and go, here's the deal. You got one of two choices. It's my way or the highway. I need you to get out of the car, according to Pennsylvania versus Mims. But what about the Constitution? Never mind the Constitution. We got Terry v. Ohio and Pennsylvania versus Mims. Get out of the car. Then I get to put my hands on you. Why would they be hated? Gosh, I don't know. They're constantly harassing us, threatening us. It's a man with a gun pulling up next to us or visiting our home or knocking down our door window we don't want to, making us insecure in our persons. I don't know why the heck you would have such a bad reputation, Mr. Copper. This guy is a walking contradiction.
Be the coolest guy in the world. They never get to that part because you have on the uniform, therefore you be bad. The overwhelming majority of cops you will find that are currently on the street are all former military guys. It's just how it is.
So this was one of the myths. I'm not going to go over all the myths because I don't see them as necessary and important as the outright incessant abuse of power. But he was saying the reason, one of the objections from his list that he's reading is that the reason people are law enforcement is because they couldn't cut it in the military. And then his argument is most of the cops, I think he said 29 to 45, are military vets. Well, that's a problem because we know that a large percentage, and this isn't downing military vets or what they thought their sacrifice might have been as they were working for the banker cartel, because that's what the military industrial complex is. It's a business, and you became an order following employee. It's just the truth. Ask somebody whose eyes have been opened, who's in the military, who's willing to be honest. They'll tell you the exact same thing. But what he's saying is military men, a large percentage of which suffer from PTSD that they used to call shell shock, are law enforcement officers. In other words, there's something bad going on upstairs, but now they're going to have the ring of power and they can exact tyranny against you. That is not a good combination. And I don't think it's a win to say, oh, you're former military. Oh, good. We're in safe hands with you. That's brain dead.
Number 7. Absolutely any idiot could be a cop. You ain't got, how smart do you got to be a cop? Pretty damn smart. I didn't know this. 100% legit. I had no idea the amount of mental load that went on in a cop's brain.
Well, to me, it's never been an issue how intelligent you are. To me, you could have a lower IQ. All I care about is, are you going to be a moral person? Are you going to do to others what you would want done to you? Conversely, are you not going to do to others what you wouldn't want done to you? Doesn't matter to me if you're a super smart guy or just a little on the dumb side. The question is, are you going to point your taser at me? Are you going to torture a Johnny Wheatcroft in front of his screaming kids? Are you going to jerk the arm of Karen Garner out of the socket and throw her into a cell and then make fun of her? I don't care what your IQ level is at that point. You could be the most sinister, intelligent person or the dumbest moral person. I'll take the dumbest moral person every single time.
I hear a lot of people argue the complain that cops don't know the law. Well, cops aren't lawyers. We're not required to know the law. We are required, however, to understand statutes. People like to think
you're not required to know the law, this guy says, but you are required to understand statutes. Let's just go into that just a little bit. Check this out. What is the difference between a statute and a law? Basically, they're both laws, but they serve two different purposes. A statute is written law created by legislation, while the law is the rule that binds all people in a community. And it says the purpose of a statute is to protect the integrity and operation of the government, while the law protects the safety of the people and their rights as citizens. So this guy admits that we don't know the law, but we know the statute. We don't know how to protect people and their rights, but we do know how to protect the integrity, if there was such a thing, and operation of the government. This guy just frickin' hung himself with that statement.
people like...
Let's listen to it again. Listen to it, just so it's clear.
I hear a lot of people argue the complain that cops don't know the law. Well, cops aren't lawyers. We're not required to know the law. We are required, however, to understand statutes.
In other words, you are required, as a requirement of your occupation, to protect the integrity and operation of the government, which is what a statute is. That's your requirement? Oh, that makes us feel real good about you.
People like to think that cops don't understand Fourth Amendment, right? You would be wrong. That gets hammered on us. We have to take multiple classes on it every year to understand where we can stand as a cop, where we can be as a cop, what we can do, what we can't do, when we can take things, when we can't take things. All of that is constantly being addressed and reevaluated and updated.
This makes you even worse. So you're telling me you're taking classes that refer to and deal with constitutional law, specifically the Fourth Amendment. So you're saying cops understand the Fourth Amendment and you violate it at will, incessantly, all the time anyway? The more he talks about law enforcement, the more I'm convinced that I didn't think cops were bad enough. Now I'm convinced that they're worse than you can possibly imagine. Thank you, Uncle Freedom, for opening my eyes.
Cops are exceptionally smart. Your average cop on the street may be a fat donut eating piece of crap, but he is a actually relatively smart guy that tests very well. Otherwise, he can't be a cop, right? Nebraska has a very high academic standards.
So now what he's making the argument of, and you cannot separate, well, you can separate intelligence level. There's complexities involved in that. Some people say the more intelligent you are, the less likely you are to commit a crime, the more likely you are to live a longer life, a safer life, and all that kind of stuff, because you make intelligent, rational decisions. But intelligence doesn't always correlate with moral actions. So what we see when these guys put on uniforms is that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So whether they are smart or stupid, the power has eaten into their brain and into their souls to where they do bad things to the rest of us, things that they wouldn't want done to themselves or their family. They're hypocrites.
What you have is cops that remain cops for a long time because they don't make stupid errors that violate people's rights.
And that's just evil, because part and parcel of being a law enforcement officer is violating people's rights. So you could have retired, 45 years on the force, and look at all these plaques on the wall. How many innocent people are sitting in jail because of that person, but they didn't call it a crime? How many people did he abuse? How many rights did he trample, but they didn't happen to call it a crime, and he was never written up for it? See, because law enforcement agencies and police unions will definitely look the other way in preference to their fellow thin blue line gang member, almost 100% of the time. And the only time that they don't is when the public relations scandal gets so big and there's so much outrage that they have to address it because the public is pressuring them. Otherwise, you would never hear of the issue, and the cop's not just going to get not fired. He'll get a suspended, paid 2-month vacation, and then he'll get a plaque on the wall, and then they'll give him a higher position. They'll give him an advancement in pay.
Oh, cops are just gang members with badges. You know who makes that statement?
Who?
People just got busted.
Oh, people who were abused by cops say cops are gang members. People who got busted for what? Now stay tuned, because we're going to go over some specifics and it's going to get very, very interesting. People who got busted by the cop, who's usually busting people who haven't broken a law, they haven't harmed anybody, they haven't threatened to harm anybody, they haven't stolen anybody's property. The cop is just there to enforce the political parasitic law of the land, the statute.
Right. Here's the thing. Cops can't take you to jail for no reason, man. Like, I love hearing that. I didn't do nothing. Nobody ever did anything when the cops show up.
Yeah, it's never for no reason, but it's almost always for a fabricated reason. Obstruction of justice. You interfered with my investigation. You were standing too close as you were recording, trying to make me accountable for my own actions.
I promise you. However, if we do things and it gives us enough information, because I don't know what people think happens, right? Like, if I arrest you for a thing, I had to have enough evidence that I can tangibly show that it took place and you are the one that committed it. And then I have...
And that thing is usually something that wasn't unconstitutional, that didn't violate another person's rights, that didn't leave a victim. That thing is the law or the statute that they're going to foist and enforce upon you against your will, without your consent. And there is no victim other than you now, because the police decided to act on behalf of the state and not on behalf of you.
I have to sign my name to a...
This gets under my skin right here.
Whole bunch of documentation as you go to jail, so that can go to an attorney that's going to be run over by your attorney. And if at any point what I did is wrong, or I didn't have a reason to do what I did, I'm in trouble. So, no.
Yes. For example, Matthew Schneider. I'm not going to pull this one particular up, but remember Matthew Schneider from the Glendale, Arizona Police Department, who was commended by one of those cop shows as one of the good cops. A month later, he tases Johnny Wheatcroft, who's the passenger in a vehicle, and this is all over a failure to activate a turn signal in a La Quinta Inn parking lot. His wife's driving, Johnny Wheatcroft's in the passenger side. Matthew Schneider and his gang, his Glendale henchmen, Glendale gang members, drag him out, tase him it's 11 times, 2 of them being in the private parts, and his kids are screaming, and the cops are going to do it anyway. And there's not one cop on the scene to stop the madness and the criminality.
Not how that works.
It is how that works.
Cops aren't gang members with badges.
Yes, they are, 100% of the time.
Though cops can be cliquey. It's just a thing.
That's cliquey. That's a gang. It's a gang, and it's a gang with unbridled, unlimited, unquestioned power with qualified immunity. That's how bad this gang is. It's worse than the Crips and the Bloods, because nobody is under the delusion that the Crips and the Bloods have legitimate authority. But everybody, it seems, believes that cops have legitimate authority. And when they abuse that authority, it exponentiates the problem and heightens the crime.
Number 9, never ever trust the cops. Cops are these same people that are scream F the po-po and that you should never ever talk to cops and cops are all bastards, are the exact same ones that are very mad when I show up and don't do enough in their eyes because they just got ripped off during their last drug deal. Fact, true story. People will call the cops because somebody robbed them in a drug deal. Because it's the principle, right? But they will absolutely do it. It's a real thing. It's the damnedest thing you've ever seen, but it really takes place. It's wild. The never trust the cop things, we see that a lot because that's kind of an institutional way of thinking. People get that way because somebody somewhere has had a bad experience with a cop, which has influenced how they view cops at their adult life.
That is absolutely not true. You can go on YouTube right now and you can listen to lawyers, seasoned lawyers, tell you it is against my legal counsel for you to talk to a cop. Why do I not want you to talk to a cop? The lawyer would say, because cops are trained to lie. They are trained to mislead. They are trained to deceive you. Ex-cops, not just lawyers, your legal team will tell you, don't talk to the cops before I get there. Let me do the talking. You do not talk to cops. They are going to entrap you and they're going to use your words against you. Don't say one freaking word. Ex-cops will tell you, hey, we're trained to lie. Our investigative technique is to lie to you to get you to talk to us. They will freaking lie about up to and including. Remember that guy who they interrogated for, that poor guy interrogated for 17 hours because his father had some kind of mental problem and he just wandered off. And so he was missing. The cops convinced the guy that they killed his father and they threatened to shoot his dog if the guy didn't tell the cops where the body was. That's how bad these people are. Not one person, not one cop to step forward going, hey, this is cruel and unusual treatment against this guy. Why don't we stop this evil? Nobody. They did it all on video.
Not all cops are the cops you grew up with, man. You have to trust somebody in this world. I like to think I'm a trustworthy dude. Because here's the thing, I'm never going to BS you. If you're wrong, I'm going to tell you you're wrong.
He's lying. That's a lie. You were, dude, you're a cop now. At least that's what I got from watching your video. He's a cop now. He knows he's trained to lie. He knows he's trained to deceive. And he's saying, I'm a trustworthy guy. If you're a cop, ex-cops will tell you, don't trust a cop. Lawyers, attorneys will tell you, don't trust. One of the stupidest things that you can do in the interaction of humanity is trust a cop. Judges will tell you, no, it's probably not a good idea to trust the cop. They're literally trained to deceive you and use every word against you. Notice how they never use your words for you, but they are going to use your words against you. It's even in their Miranda rights. Anything you say can and will be used against you. By who? By the cop. Who's going to write the report? How many cops lie in reports? Hey, I got a question for you, Uncle Freedom. How many reports have you lied on or embellished or exaggerated? We listened to Dominic Izzo talk to that other guy, and they both admitted that during the course of their career, many times they lied on reports. Get the frick out of here with this nonsense.
I love this one too. Cops are absolutely always looking for a reason to use force. Dude, do you realize how much paperwork I got to do if I so much as take you to the ground? Like, I'm not even talking like hit you with a metal stick or tased you or pepper sprayed you or delivered a knee strike to your common peroneal, right? Just me taking you to the ground requires a whole bunch of extra paperwork and scrutiny. Believe me, cops are not hunting a reason to hurt you. Because there's a lot more paperwork, if for no other reason than there's a lot more paperwork. Never mind the fact that cops generally just don't want to get into a fight with you. There are some, but it's rarer than you think.
I'm not going to take you down. I'm not going to infringe on your rights. I'm not going to violate you in any way because I got to do paperwork. That's his excuse. Nobody's got a desire to hurt you. He's basically saying, we're not going to hurt you because of the paperwork. And yet, what do we see? They don't mind doing the paperwork because they're hurting us all the time. It is too commonplace to list. Brian, out of 700,000 police officers out there, do you not realize that you're just watching a handful of videos? It's not just a handful of videos. It's tens of thousands. I would venture to say hundreds of thousands of videos of cops abusing their power every single day. I'm going to prove it in a second. Stay tuned. We're going to get through this. We're almost done with his nonsense.
The only time cops see money is if we raid you for drugs and we seize.
The objection here was cops get some kind of stipend or they get some kind of percentage increase on their pay for issuing more tickets. And he's saying that's a myth.
A bunch of money, some of that money stays behind as part of the drug fund, right? So that we can continue doing and getting more equipment. For the most part, though, like, dude, we don't get anything for writing a ticket, right? It's you wrote a ticket. You know what you get for writing a ticket? Extra paperwork, a report you're guaranteed to have to do, and now you're going to go to court. But what you see a lot now is cops are very gun shy to get into altercations because they are viewed so negatively by the public. And the only thing like most cops want in their life is to not end up in the news and to not become case law. Like that is a cop's driving goal in their life. They don't want
this is a cop talking. The driving goal in my life is to not end up on the news in a negative manner and to not become a part of case law. That tells you everything you need to know about the heart of a cop. I just don't want to be perceived as a bad guy. When it should be completely opposite. You should actually just be a hero because you are. You should actually just be a good person and be kind and don't foist economic terrorism on people because that's not the kind of person you are. Not because you don't want to end up on the news in a negative manner or become a part of case law. This reveals the corrupt nature inside of everybody who wears the badge. He's making it worse for cops. Well, actually, he's making it better for the rest of us because now he's showing us that cops were worse than we actually thought. I mean, before I watched Uncle Freedom's video here, I knew cops were bad. But now I've got a deeper understanding of, hey, I didn't even know what I was talking about because they're worse than I possibly imagined.
They want to be on the news for a bad reason, and they don't want to be the reason that case law exists, because it's not a fun time.
It's not a fun time, and cops are all about having that fun time. And outside of the fact that there are some instances where you've got this officer right here who pulled the sergeant off the guy that he was abusing. Let's take a look at that. She's grabbing by his utility belt, pulls him back. He grabs her by the neck. He gets suspended and all that. But other than this kind of thing, I always ask this question. Okay, this officer did a good thing right then. I've never made the argument that cops don't do good things. Cops can do good things, just like the Nazi SS probably did some good things. They were kind to their family. They didn't kick their dogs and all that kind of stuff. But what do they do the other times? Nobody ever asks about that. How many people are in jail? How many innocent people are in jail because of this person who did this good thing against this cop right here? Actually stepped forward and was that good cop in that moment to try to stop evil from happening. See, the thing that people don't understand is when this guy is talking on behalf of cops, they just reveal the fact that, what we thought about cops was worse than we had initially surmised. So cops are so bad that they enforce tyrannical Convid 1984 laws, even to the point of arresting innocent people paddleboarding. Listen to this.
We cut him off.
Yep, this paddleboarder was arrested after refusing to get out of the water in Malibu. CBS 2's Amy Johnson has more on the showdown near the sand.
What we're going to try to do here is we're going to try to pick out all those good cops that are around that are going to stop the bad cops from enforcing this Convid 1984 by George Orwell nonsense. Let's see if we can find him.
It's a stand-up paddle pursuit.
A paddleboarder is chased down by law enforcement for being out on the water at Malibu Beach.
Oh, he faked him out. Now he's going back out to sea.
All LA County beaches are closed due to the coronavirus and social distancing after crowds gathered on LA beaches early in the crisis.
Sheriff boat.
The incident caught on camera as the paddleboarder was taken into custody for...
Look at that. That's all you need to know. Taken into custody for what? All these good cops out there stopping these bad... Oh, that's right. There aren't any good cops stopping the bad cops from foisting absolute tyranny on the people. What is going on here? What is going on here? Hey, Uncle Freedom, where are the good cops? You're making the case for good cops. Why did they do this? How about gun confiscation? The cops wouldn't possibly create a mandate to confiscate guns who stayed behind in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina to defend themselves and their loved ones and their property, would they, Uncle Freedom?
They say there are no orders to use force, just strong persuasion. Sometimes entering open houses with guns.
No orders to use force as they come in all tacked out, enter your property against your Fourth Amendment right and try to seize your guns against your Second Amendment right. But there's no order for force, just the implied threat of force.
Guns drawn and instructions to disarm anyone inside.
You said guns will be taken. No one will be able to be armed. We will take.
This is the police chief, New Orleans police chief. No one will be able to be armed. In other words, we're going to confiscate their guns in violation of the Second Amendment. By the way, while we're talking about the Second Amendment, let's just talk about this, Uncle Freedom. Let's talk about the fact that every single law enforcement agent in states like New York, California, Illinois, Connecticut, Massachusetts, all these states, these are the restrictive gun laws. They will violate your Second Amendment right at the drop of the hat because the legislators told them to. So they've become the order followers that make the world a worse place. You want to add insult to injury right here? Check out where Missouri is on this list. Missouri is way down here. They are literally called a constitutional carry state. In 2014, when I and my daughters were open carrying in a Walmart to stop by and get something to eat on our way to St. Louis, the cops detained us and harassed us because they got a call that somebody's exercising their rights. trying to get us to ID. We didn't end up IDing because, we were green back then. We didn't know what we were doing, and we didn't know what the law was, and we didn't know how to hold cops accountable. But even in states where gun control laws aren't that prevalent, they're still exacting anti-Second Amendment tyranny against us. But Uncle Freedom here says that cops aren't bad. Most cops are good. It's just a few bad apples. It's nonsense. Or what about civil asset forfeiture? We know about Stephen Lara and many, many others who've fallen prey to law enforcement agencies. This one right here happens to be Nevada Highway Patrol against ex-military guy, ex-vet, Stephen Lara, who had $87,000 of his hard-earned income that he was going to take to help his daughters out in California, driving from Texas to California. Nevada Highway Patrol stole his money under legalized armed robbery called civil asset forfeiture. Listen to this.
Hey Shane, how are you? Good. Hey, can you head out to a traffic stop? Or are you busy on that other stuff all today?
Pulled Stephen Lara over, calling an agent.
So far, I'm still searching a car, but big bundle of money. It says probably at least 100,000.
That interaction shows what's at the heart.
This is Institute for Justice, and they kind of summarize what's going on. But $87,000 was stolen from Stephen Lara under civil asset forfeiture because we got to stop the Mexican drug cartels. And in case you think that it's not according to policy or according to their own statutes and codes, this right here is a letter from the Honorable Sheriff Jim Skinner, who's the head of the National Sheriff's Association, begging Representative Red Flag Law Dan Crenshaw not to get rid of civil asset forfeiture. And it was signed on by, you want a few bad apples? Don't give me that nonsense. There's 3,000, let's see if I can write this, 144 counties in the United States. Not all counties have sheriffs, but 3,086 sheriffs, which will include, because he's the high guy in the sheriff's office, everybody under him is a deputy. 3,086 sheriffs signed on to this statement by the National Sheriff's Association begging Representative Dan Crenshaw to not take the power of civil asset forfeiture, which is also legalized armed robbery, away. They want to continue foisting this on Americans. It's evil. It's downright evil. And when you have this many sheriffs out of this many counties, that's everybody. It's nearly every single sheriff that wants to exact legalized armed robbery against you. Uncle Freedom, what the hell are you thinking? This is the part of the organization, the Thin Blue Line gang, that you're actually in. And I mean, time just does not permit me to talk about all the egregious things that happen. What about the Uvalde police officers? You're going to tell me that people don't get their rights violated every single day under drug laws? Let me give you some drug war stats real quick. I wasn't going to go over some of this, but I just feel like it's necessary. Look at this. Every 31 seconds, and I bet it's worse than that, but every 31 seconds, a cop arrests someone for a drug offense, and over 85% of the drug arrests are for possession alone. Tell me that, Uncle Freedom, tell me that's not a violation of life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. You're gonna arrest somebody because they have plant matter. You've got to be kidding me. There was another one right here because, you know, what you have here with cops is you have the prison industrial complex, and cops are the ones who facilitate that. They funnel people who are not criminals into the criminal injustice center and the prison industrial complex. It says 1 in 5 of the nearly 2 million people currently incarcerated in the U.S., 1 in 5 is locked up for a drug offense. Usually it's just possession. And incarceration harms people. It doesn't help people. It harms societies. It doesn't help them. It harms families. It doesn't help them. And guess who facilitates this? People like Uncle Freedom. Isn't that ironic that he's called Uncle Freedom? Uncle Freedom is trying to tell you that the cops aren't as bad as cops really are. Are cops going to come to your door and step in the way of the IRS agent who wants to drag you to jail because you wouldn't let the federal government extort you? No, they're not going to. They're not going to. Traffic laws trump individual unalienable rights. And let's just talk about Uvalde for a second. If it's true that there are just a few bad apples, then why did 376 cops from 3 to 5 different agencies show up and not one good cop while the shooting was going on in Robb Elementary School? Why did not one good cop step forward and take action? Because one of the worst people that you can have in this world is an order follower. They're just following orders. They're just doing what they're told. They're the conformists that do what they're told regardless of what is right instead of doing right regardless of what they're told. In the academy, the Bill of Rights gets a cursory review if it gets any attention at all, but their focus is on procedural training. Cops serve in the position of order followers just like, it's no different than the Nazi SS, and it's crazy. And let me just leave you with one last thought, Uncle Freedom, since you think cops are so good. The fact is, and there are different estimates on this, if it's true, this is absolutely horrible and tyrannical. They say over 125,000 traffic tickets are issued every single day. At the average of $150 per traffic ticket, you do 125,000 times 150 times 365. And you know the number you get? You get a revenue generation windfall of 6.2 to 6.8 billion, not million, billion dollars. That's an astronomical sum, all in the name of protecting and serving. So the case that Uncle Freedom is trying to make here that cops are good completely backfired on him, and he has actually demonstrated and proved to his audience that however bad you thought cops were, Uncle Freedom just let you know they're worse than you can possibly imagine. Leave your thoughts about this for the world and the global thought police in the comment section below. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. I'll put the link to Uncle Freedom's video in the description. If you want to respond to him, let him know that I responded to him. If he wants to get on a live stream and talk about the facts, not fiction, let's talk about the facts. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody you know. Don't forget to subscribe to my email list or my website, highimpactflix.com. If you want to support the channel further, grab a shirt, become a channel member. But more importantly, understand that freedom is dangerous. It's unpredictable. It can be scary at times. But what's more dangerous, unpredictable, and scary is not having freedom. And cops are constantly trying to take that freedom away. Don't forget that. I will see you in the next video.